Cathaoirleach, maybe I'm taking up from where Deputy Harkin left off in the context of policy coherence and the value of this bill. So, first of all, I want to say that the bill itself is timely. It's a bill that has gone through committee stage and has successfully gone through it in the context it has invited various other recommendations, and no doubt in the course of the committee stage again it will bring forward more ideas, more inputs, and that's to be welcomed. But I want to look at the impact of the bill as it stands and how it will impact on the various sectors. So I'm going to say agriculture comes to mind first. And in agriculture, we have a lot of farmers, a lot of people involved in all sorts of agriculture that are willing to participate fully in achieving the best possible goals for the environment, in doing the right thing by the next generation. And I have, a lot of respect for the farming community in what they have achieved to date. They have looked after the countryside. They, as is often said in this House, have been the custodians of rural Ireland. And they need to be recognised for that in a very positive way. So the government has set about, over the last 10 years, encouraging farmers and family farms to go in a particular direction, to develop their herd numbers, to develop their dairy units. And all of this results in a huge cost to them. Some of them have, invested anything up to €500,000 euros, because this is what the policy of government was and is up to now. And if we're to change that, then it cannot be a dramatic change or an immediate change. And it has to be supported by a serious level of funding that will comfortably move the farming community in a different direction. Now, I have no doubt that they will cooperate fully. I've seen that right across rural Ireland and within the farming communities. But I've seen a lack of support and understanding from the government side in the context of the support, financially and otherwise, and the assistance that they need to continue to have viable family farm units that they can make a decent living from. And that relates not just to their activities, whether it's dairy or otherwise. It relates to the type of vehicles that they're using, the type of machinery that they're using, and the cost of that machinery, and the cost to change that machinery to a more acceptable fuel that will do the job at the same time, be kind to the environment, and be supportive of the farmer. That is going to cost a huge amount of money. Even down as far as getting the credit for the maintenance of hedgerows and the biodiversity that's there. I don't think enough is being said about that, the small things that have made a huge difference to rural Ireland, huge difference to the environment, and have really been a substantial contribution from the farming community. And not enough is being said about that from Europe, who are more interested in the bureaucracy of the schemes that they put in place, beneficial to the farming community, but also very heavy in the context of the bureaucracy and red tape that they engage in. And I think that that's regrettable, because all of that costs a huge amount of money, and that money could be better spent going directly into the farming business that the families are engaged in. So first and foremost in this bill, we do have to protect rural Ireland. We have to protect the direction that those that live in rural Ireland want to go in, while at the same time being sympathetic to the cause of having a better environment, having a greener environment, one that is sustainable and understanding. My own background is transport, and I would say to you, Minister, that the transport industry has done a lot to try and comply with the various upgrades of engine and type of engine, AdBlue and the other bigger engines that are there, to ensure that they are doing their bit to save the environment. But at what cost? Like farming, they are not making sufficient profits to be able to casually invest in the newer type of machinery that they will want to meet all of the targets or to assist you in meeting those targets, and therefore they will need assistance. So as trucks leave Ireland and go to the continent, they have that long journey to go. And if we're going to ask them to have the engines and the type of engines that are required, as I said, to meet the targets, then they will need support for that. And these are two areas, transport and agriculture, that are hugely labour intensive. A transport operator is not just someone that sits in a truck. It's hugely labour intensive, even down to the delivery of in-time parcels that everyone is out buying online. The electric vehicles, with their technology, don't necessarily, right now, suit the operator to change. One, because they can't get distance, and two, because of cost. So again, you're down to money. And I'm not arguing against the bill. I'm arguing for the bill, but to have tangible supports there that are real and meaningful to the sectors that we are going to directly affect. And you must consider the individual. You must consider those that currently cannot afford fuel, that are having real serious difficulty in heating their old homes. Will the grants be more easily accessible? Will the grants be greater than what's there? Will they do the job without bringing poverty and hardship to people who really want to do something for the planet, but who in their own lives don't have the resources necessary to give them a place in what will be a new society and a new economy in terms of greening the country? So those individuals will need supports to properly insulate their homes, properly change the fuel that they use, and to do it in a sensible and a pragmatic way. And I particularly mention any changes that will bring about the type of poverty that older people are currently experiencing. All of us have met cases in our own constituencies of individuals, elderly couples, that have not been able to heat their homes, that are worried about the future and their homes. And they hear us here talking in grand terms about the climate change bill and other matters, and they're not part of that conversation because they believe that they can't afford to be part of that conversation. And if we are to be inclusive and to have policies that are properly connected in the context of their deliverables, then those people, too, have to be included. So costs are huge, and those costs have to be considered. Communities were mentioned earlier on, and the cornerstone of Ireland and its development has always been around the strength of its community. How strong is your community in terms of advocacy, in terms of infrastructure to carry you in the context of family issues or developing communities? And they have to be supported. I listened carefully to an individual on Joe Duffy yesterday making the case for a friend of his who rents bicycles. Now, we were talking about the just transition. And when I heard what happened to that man in business after 11 years, that Board Mona decided to put the thing out to tender. He had built it. He had constructed the business. He had actively engaged with community at a very workable level, very tangible in what he was doing, and brought the community along with him in hiring the bikes and in seeing what the park was like, what the country was like, what the basic things in life that we're now all enjoying, what it was like. And yet that business was taken from him. That's not a just transition. It's anything but. So we do have to address that. I want to turn, Minister, to what we have now. What's happening now? If we had no climate change bill, if we had no discussion in this House about it, this is what's happening. Local authorities are continuing to pollute the waters of this country by allowing raw sewage and other contaminants to go into the rivers, and are not doing a whole deal about it. Why? Because they're looking for funding to deal with it. And until we address the issues that are currently causing the problems, we're going to have difficulties in addressing the issues that we want addressed to achieve the ambitious targets that you are setting out. And I would caution you against enshrining stuff today in law that may have to be changed very quickly in a short period of time after the enactment of the bill. So to go back to what's happening wrong in the context of the economy today, if you look at how busy the quarries are, legitimate quarries doing a legitimate business under a legitimate planning application. I have no difficulty with that. They're meeting their conditions. But there are illegal quarries out there in Kilkenny and in Laois in particular that do not have planning permission, that have escaped the law in terms of what the County Council is doing to bring them back into being a lawful registered quarry. And I have raised this issue in this House. I've raised it with the Taoiseach, and I'm raising it directly with you here now, Minister Ryan. And I'm asking you, in the interest of the countryside, will you look at those quarries that are breaking the law now, that are causing untold destruction to nature, that are operating without any licence, without any proper planning permission? Will you investigate Laois and Kilkenny and find out what is happening in relation to those quarries that are breaking the law? What is happening with the citizens that are making the complaints about the law being broken? What can we do about the banks and the vulture funds that currently own some of those quarries, that are turning a blind eye to the asset being stripped, and that are taking no action to support the local communities? Now, these are the real issues of today. And yet we in the Dáil here tend to ignore them, because if I raise it here with the Minister by way of parliamentary question, I'm told that it's a matter for the County Council. And that may be the case, but it's a matter for this House when the law breaks down, when the Council is not being given the full support of the state, the resource of the state, to battle some of these individuals that are breaking the law. And I'm not painting everyone with the one brush. I'm saying that there's a small number, but the devastation that they're causing in local communities to the environment that we are trying to protect in this bill is scandalous. And the laws are there. So I'm hoping that we're not passing another law today when this bill goes through. And I wish you well with the bill. But I also would say to you that in terms of, the totality of government, when a matter is raised like this in the House, which I've done on 2 or 3 occasions before, then whatever minister is listening should at least have the interest to check it out, should at least have the interest to follow it up. And I have followed up some of these particular queries in relation to quarries. And I'm shocked by the fact that it takes so long to stop the individual from breaking the law, that there is considerable damage done in that short period of time to the environment. And what's happening alongside that then is, when the community that you're trying to represent sees that there is, a little impact being made on the complaints that they are making, they lose faith in politicians. They lose faith in the system. And then the authority breaks down, and maybe they decide, well, if they can take a shortcut because they have money, well, maybe I can take a shortcut. And I know that people that live in Northern Ireland don't want to do that. So please, Minister, you've heard me ask you, and I'm pleading with you to respond to me, maybe not today, maybe in writing, to what can be done to support the councils that are dealing with these issues. Planning was mentioned in relation to local government. And in order to support rural Ireland, to rebuild the villages and the towns that have been devastated by the financial crash, now by COVID, and by closures of bank branches and post offices and so on, in order to support them, they need to be included in this just transition. And just transition from the Midlands, from what I hear, has not been what they expected. They expected much, much more and got far, far less than what they were promised. And that doesn't bode well for this bill or for the actions that we require out of this bill, because those actions will require substantial funding. And the only real way to make anything happen in this country is to go back to community, go back to being small, go back to empowering a local community or village to rebuild itself by giving them the tools to do so, whether it's a law, whether it's financial support, whether it's planning permission. Allow people to come back to their own place of birth or their own place where they were reared. Give them the opportunity to do that and have a thread running through from government to local government, from policy on planning or climate change, and I welcome the fact that councils will have to do likewise, but in the context of rebuilding communities and our villages. Think small. Our housing policy is falling asunder because we are trying to do things in a grand way. Why not take it back to the local authorities? Let them build the houses. They know the profile of the local authority housing list. You don't need a grand plan. They did it in the 50s and 60s, and they built really good houses. We can do the same thing if we build small, if we go back to the communities, go back to the county councils, empower them to do it without the bureaucracy and the red tape. So I'm going to finish, Minister, by saying there are lots of people throughout the country that are central to what you are trying to achieve, that want to assist you, that want to assist a change in the way that they live, in order to pass the country on to the next generation in much better shape. Please support their willingness by putting money into and putting initiatives into local communities and the parish that this country was built on.